The arena stretched across 3 kilometers of polished metal, its walls rising into the artificial atmosphere of Station Omega-7. Maya Chen stood at the entrance gate, her worn jumpsuit a stark contrast to the gleaming armor of the other competitors. Around her, beings from dozens of worlds prepared for the Galactic Combat Championship, their exotic weapons humming with energy. The crowd's roar echoed through the massive structure as holographic displays showed the bracket. Maya's name appeared in tiny letters at the bottom, paired against Vexthor the Destroyer, a towering Krillian warrior whose forearms could crush steel beams. The audience erupted in laughter when her image appeared next to his. A human. A single, fragile human. Ambassador Kellen shifted uncomfortably in the diplomatic box. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for only 2 years, and humanity was still seen as the newest, weakest member. They were supposed to be observers, not participants. Maya's last-minute registration had caught everyone off guard. "This is madness," whispered Dr. Sarah Park, Earth's xenobiology expert. "She's going to get herself killed out there." Below in the arena, Maya ignored the jeers and focused on her breathing. She had trained for this moment her entire life, though no one knew it. While other humans dreamed of space exploration and diplomatic careers, Maya had studied every combat form from every known species. She had spent years in Earth's gravity wells, pushing her body beyond normal human limits. The Krillian champion stomped into the arena, each footstep shaking the ground, his biosignature read off the charts, strength capable of lifting hover cars, reflexes faster than most species could track, and natural armor that had never been penetrated. Vexthor raised his forearms to the crowd, basking in their cheers. Maya walked to her starting position, her hands empty while her opponent carried plasma cannons in 2 arms and energy blades in the others. The betting pools had stopped taking wagers on her survival time. Most gave her 30 seconds. The arena's AI announced the rules in 17 languages. No killing, but everything else was permitted. The fight would end when one competitor could no longer continue. Medical drones hovered nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. As the countdown began, Maya closed her eyes and felt the familiar calm settle over her. This was what she had prepared for. Not the championship itself, but this moment when humanity would be judged, when they would see what humans were truly capable of. The buzzer sounded. Vexthor charged immediately, his massive form moving with surprising speed. Plasma bolts erupted from his weapons, lighting up the arena floor where Maya had been standing. But she was no longer there. She had rolled to the side with a fluidity that seemed impossible, coming up in a sprint toward the arena's edge. The crowd laughed louder. The human was running away, but Maya wasn't retreating. She was positioning. As Vexthor turned to track her movement, she leaped onto one of the arena's support pillars, using her momentum to swing around it. Her smaller size and lower mass worked to her advantage, allowing her to change direction in ways the bulkier alien couldn't match. Vexthor fired again, his plasma bolts scorching the metal where she had been. Each shot was powerful enough to level a building, but they were useless if they couldn't hit their target. The Krillian's 4 eyes tracked her movement, confusion replacing his initial confidence. Maya landed in a crouch 20 meters away from her opponent. For the first time she spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "You're strong," she said, standing slowly. "But strength without precision is just noise." The crowd fell silent, sensing something had changed in the arena's atmosphere. Even Vexthor hesitated, his weapons lowering slightly as he studied this strange human who moved like liquid mercury. Maya began to walk forward, her pace steady and unhurried. With each step, her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing deepened, and her hands moved into positions that looked casual, but were actually the opening stances of 7 different martial arts. Vexthor fired again, a barrage of plasma designed to overwhelm any defense. Maya didn't dodge this time. Instead, she moved through the energy bolts like a dancer through ribbons, each movement calculated to place her exactly where the shots wouldn't be. It was impossible, the crowd murmured. No one could predict plasma trajectory that precisely, but Maya could. She had studied Krillian targeting systems, learned their firing patterns, and understood how their four-armed coordination worked. Every species had weaknesses, blind spots created by their very strengths. The Krillian's power made them predictable. As she closed the distance, Vexthor dropped his ranged weapons and raised his energy blades. The twin weapons hummed with enough power to cut through starship hulls. He swung down with all four arms, a coordinated attack that should have ended the fight. Maya stepped into the attack instead of away from it, moving inside his reach where the blades couldn't build momentum. Her hand struck his center mass, a gentle tap that looked pathetic compared to his massive frame. But Vexthor stumbled. The crowd gasped as the mighty Krillian took a step backward, his four arms wavering. What they had witnessed wasn't a gentle tap. It was a precisely placed strike that had disrupted his nervous system at exactly the right pressure point. Maya had found his weakness. And now she was just getting started. Vexthor shook his massive head, trying to clear the strange sensation that had spread through his nervous system. His biomonitor showed anomalous readings, but his pride wouldn't let him acknowledge what the crowd had seen. A human had made him stumble with a single touch. The arena erupted in confused chatter. Diplomats leaned forward in their seats, suddenly paying attention to the small human who had somehow disrupted a Krillian warrior's balance. In the Earth delegation box, Ambassador Kellens gripped his armrest until his knuckles turned white. "That's impossible," Dr. Park whispered, reviewing her tablet's readings. "Krillian nervous systems aren't supposed to have external pressure points accessible to other species." But Maya knew better. She had spent 3 years studying with Master Lu, an elderly martial artist who had been among the first humans to interact with alien physiology. While everyone else focused on technology and diplomacy, he had quietly mapped the pressure points and neural pathways of every species humanity had encountered. Vexthor roared in frustration and charged again, his energy blades carving glowing arcs through the air. This time he moved with less coordination, favoring his left side where Maya's strike had disrupted his neural flow. She could see the compensation in his movements, the slight delay in his right arms compared to his left. Maya waited until the last possible moment before moving. Instead of dodging completely, she slipped past his guard like water flowing around a boulder. Her hand found another pressure point, this one along his spine where Krillian nerve clusters bunched together. The strike looked effortless, almost gentle. Vexthor's right side went completely numb. The crowd fell silent as the massive alien warrior crashed to one knee, his two right arms hanging uselessly at his side. The energy blades clattered across the arena floor, their power cells spinning away in different directions. "Impossible," breathed Thexara, the Altarian combat specialist in the commentator's booth. "No one has ever made Vexthor kneel. His exoskeleton should have protected him from any neural disruption." But Maya hadn't attacked his exoskeleton. She had found the microscopic gaps where different armor plates met, places where the natural gaps in Krillian biology created vulnerabilities. Each species in the galaxy had evolved their own strengths, but evolution also created predictable weaknesses. Vexthor struggled to his feet using only his left arms, rage and confusion warring in his four eyes. He had fought across 17 worlds, defeated champions from dozens of species, and never once had anyone reduced him to using half his body. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded in heavily accented galactic standard. Maya circled him slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. "Not sorcery, biology. Every living thing has patterns, and patterns can be understood." The Krillian lunged forward with his remaining functional arms, trying to grapple her in a bear hug that would crush her bones. But his reduced mobility made him even more predictable. Maya ducked under his grasp and struck again, this time hitting a cluster of nerves behind his left knee. Vexthor toppled forward like a falling tree. The arena shook as his massive frame hit the floor. Medical drones immediately swarmed toward him, but Maya held up her hand. The gesture was small, almost casual, but everyone in the arena understood its meaning. "He's not injured," she announced clearly, "just temporarily paralyzed. The effects will wear off in about 10 minutes. Dr. Park's tablet showed Vexthor's vital signs, all normal except for the neural pathway disruptions. No damage, no permanent effects. Maya had defeated one of the galaxy's most feared warriors without actually hurting him. The crowd remained silent for a long moment, processing what they had witnessed. Then slowly, whispers began to spread through the stands. The humans weren't what they had seemed. This small, fragile-looking being had just demonstrated knowledge of Krillian anatomy that their own medical specialists didn't possess. Ambassador Kellens found his voice first. "Maya," he called down to the arena floor, "where did you learn to do that?" Maya looked up at the diplomatic box. her expression calm despite having just performed the impossible. Every species publishes their medical journals in the galactic database. I read them, all of them. The simple statement sent shockwaves through the assembled diplomats. Medical journals were technical documents, dense with biological terminology and complex anatomical diagrams. Most beings could barely understand the medical texts of their own species, let alone master the physiology of dozens of different evolutionary paths. But Maya had done exactly that. While others saw diversity in the galaxy's species, she had seen patterns, nervous systems that followed predictable paths, pressure points that existed in all vertebrate species, and weaknesses that were universal despite their alien origins. In the Vexalan delegation box, Commander Zixtar leaned forward with new interest. His species had been watching humanity with mild curiosity, but this demonstration changed everything. If one human could master their combined biological knowledge so completely, what else were they capable of? The arena's medical team confirmed that Vexthor was uninjured, but would need time to recover feeling in his limbs. The match was declared a victory for Maya Chen of Earth, and her name moved up the tournament bracket. As Maya walked toward the exit, the crowd's laughter had transformed into something else entirely. Respect, perhaps, or maybe fear. She had shown them that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or diplomacy. It was their ability to learn, to understand and to find patterns where others saw only chaos. The tournament was just beginning, and Maya had 7 more opponents to face, but now the galaxy was watching her with very different eyes. The rest period between matches lasted exactly 4 hours, giving competitors time to rest and spectators time to place new bets. But in the underground levels of Station Omega-7, something unprecedented was happening. Maya Chen was being studied. Captain Mordak of the Hegemony Intelligence Division paced around a holographic display showing Maya's fight in slow motion. His reptilian features were twisted in concentration as he analyzed every movement, every strike, every impossible moment where she had predicted Vexthor's attacks. "Run it again," he commanded his aide. "Focus on the final sequence." The hologram replayed Maya's last 3 strikes, each one precisely placed to disrupt specific neural pathways. The computer's analysis showed trajectory calculations that should have required advanced combat computers and real-time biological scanning. "Sir," his aide said hesitantly, "our xenobiology experts say this level of cross-species anatomical knowledge should be impossible to acquire. The neural mapping alone would require decades of direct study with live subjects." Mordak's clawed hand scratched against his scaled chin. The hegemony had been the galaxy's dominant military power for 3 centuries, built on their superior understanding of warfare and biology. If humanity had somehow surpassed their knowledge in just 2 years of galactic contact, the implications were staggering. Meanwhile, in a different section of the station, Maya sat alone in her assigned quarters reviewing data on her next opponent. Zipara the Silent was an ethereal assassin, a species known for their ability to phase partially out of normal space-time. They were nearly impossible to hit and could strike from angles that defied 3-dimensional thinking. Maya pulled up 17 different medical studies on ethereal physiology, cross-referencing them with combat footage from previous tournaments. Their phasing ability was tied to specialized organs that manipulated quantum fields around their bodies. But like all biological systems, it had limitations. The door chimed and Dr. Park entered with Ambassador Kellens close behind. Both looked shaken by the day's events. "Maya," Dr. Park began, settling into the room's single chair, "we need to talk. What you did out there, the medical team is baffled. They're saying you knew things about Krillian anatomy that their own doctors don't understand." Maya looked up from her tablet, her expression unchanged. "I studied. For how long?" Ambassador Kellens asked, his diplomatic training warring with genuine curiosity. "Since I was 12, Maya replied simply. "When the first alien medical texts were translated, I started reading them. By the time I was 16, I had memorized the anatomical structures of 43 different species." The 2 officials exchanged glances. Maya had been preparing for this tournament for over a decade, long before humanity had even joined the Galactic Council. "But why?" Dr. Park pressed. "What made you think this knowledge would be necessary?" Maya stood and walked to the room's small viewport, looking out at the swirling cosmos beyond. "Because I could see what was coming. Humanity was going to be tested. Not in boardrooms or diplomatic meetings, but here where strength and skill matter. We needed to prove we belonged. And you thought the best way to do that was to fight aliens in a tournament? I thought the best way was to understand them completely, Maya corrected. Every species out there has advantages over us. They're stronger, faster, more resilient, but they all think in patterns based on their own biology. We think differently because we evolved differently. Ambassador Kellens frowned. What do you mean? Maya turned back to face them. Humans are generalists. Every other species in the galaxy specialized over millions of years. The Krillians became incredibly strong but predictable. The Ethereals gained quantum abilities but lost physical resilience. The Vexallans developed group consciousness but sacrificed individual creativity. She gestured to her tablet, where anatomical diagrams of dozens of species were displayed. We're the only species that kept our adaptability. That's why I could learn their biology when they can't fully understand each other's. We're not limited by evolutionary specialization. Dr. Park stared at the diagrams, recognizing the implications. You're saying humanity's weakness is actually our strength? Not weakness, difference. Maya returned to her tablet, pulling up new data on her next opponent. The galaxy has been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt to new challenges. They rely on their natural advantages and never learn to compensate for their limitations. A soft chime indicated that the next match would begin in 30 minutes. Maya gathered her few belongings, preparing to face an opponent who could partially exist in another dimension. Maya, Ambassador Kellens said as she reached the door, the entire galaxy is watching now. After what you did to Vexthor, everyone wants to see what happens next. Maya paused at the threshold. Good, let them watch. Let them see what humans can do when we stop apologizing for being different. As she left for the arena, Dr. Park and Ambassador Kellens remained in the quiet room, both understanding that they were witnessing something historic. Maya Chen wasn't just fighting for tournament victory. She was redefining humanity's place in the galactic community. In the arena preparation chambers, Zipara the Silent phased in and out of visibility, their translucent form flickering between dimensions. Other competitors watched with respect and fear. The Ethereal had never lost a match, never even been touched by an opponent. But as Maya entered the preparation area, Zipara's phasing flickered momentarily. For just an instant, uncertainty crossed their alien features. Word of the Krillian champion's defeat had spread, and with it, questions about what this human might know about ethereal biology. Maya smiled as she began her pre-fight stretches. She had read 23 research papers on ethereal quantum organs, studied their dimensional phasing patterns, and identified exactly 17 ways their abilities could be countered by someone who understood the underlying physics. The galaxy was about to learn that human adaptability was more dangerous than any specialized evolution. The arena had been modified for the second round. Holographic barriers flickered in and out of existence, creating a three-dimensional maze that would allow Zipara to use their phasing abilities to maximum advantage. The ethereal could slip through solid matter, appearing anywhere within the combat zone without warning. Maya studied the environment as she entered, noting the barrier placement and timing sequences. Each holographic wall followed a predictable pattern, creating temporary blind spots that an ethereal would naturally exploit. But predictable patterns were exactly what she had learned to counter. The crowd was different now. Where before they had laughed at the human challenger, now they watched in tense silence. News of Vexthor's defeat had spread through the station like wildfire, carrying with it wild theories about human capabilities. In the ethereal delegation box, Prime Phase Karani watched their champion with growing concern. Zipara had never shown nervousness before, but their form was flickering more rapidly than usual, a sign of emotional instability that could affect their quantum coherence. Perhaps we should withdraw, suggested Subphase Velith. If this human has found some way to counter our abilities, impossible, Korani replied, though their voice lacked conviction. Ethereal quantum biology is beyond the understanding of solid matter species. Our research teams have confirmed this repeatedly, but down in the arena, Maya was demonstrating that confirmed research could be wrong. As the match began, Zipara immediately phased out of normal space, becoming a barely visible shimmer in the air. They could attack from this state while remaining nearly untouchable. striking with energy weapons that existed partially in quantum space. The crowd held its breath as the ethereal circled their apparently helpless opponent. Maya stood in the center of the arena, turning slowly as she tracked movement that should have been impossible to follow. Zipporah struck from behind, their quantum blade materializing just long enough to pass through where Maya's spine should have been, but Maya wasn't there. She had stepped aside at the exact moment the blade became solid, as if she had known precisely when and where the attack would manifest. The ethereal tried again, phasing through a holographic barrier to attack from an unexpected angle. Once again, Maya moved at the perfect moment, avoiding the strike by centimeters. "How?" Zipporah whispered in their native language, their voice carrying an otherworldly echo. Maya turned to face them, though they were still partially phased and nearly invisible. "Quantum coherence follows mathematical patterns," she said calmly. "Your phasing ability operates on a 7.3-second cycle with micro-variations based on emotional state. Right now, your nervousness is shortening the cycle by 0.6 seconds. The arena fell completely silent. Maya had just described technical aspects of ethereal biology that were considered state secrets by their government. Zipporah's form flickered more violently, their quantum coherence destabilizing under the shock of being so thoroughly understood. "You cannot know these things. Our quantum organs are unique in the galaxy. Unique, yes. Impossible to understand, no." Maya reached into her jumpsuit and pulled out a small device that looked like a modified medical scanner. "Quantum fields create electromagnetic signatures. Your people never thought to look for them because you were too close to your own biology to see the patterns." She activated the device, and suddenly Zipporah's position became clearly visible to everyone in the arena, their partial phasing no longer providing any concealment. The ethereal delegation erupted in shocked protests. "That device is illegal," Korani transmitted to the tournament officials. "She's using technology to counter natural abilities." But the referee's analysis showed that Maya's scanner was entirely passive, detecting but not affecting quantum fields. It was no different from using enhanced vision to spot a camouflaged opponent. Zipporah realized their advantage was gone and fully materialized, drawing two energy weapons that crackled with contained lightning. If they couldn't rely on stealth, they would have to fight directly. But Maya had studied their combat techniques too. Ethereal fighting styles were built around sudden appearances and disappearances, quick strikes followed by immediate withdrawal. They had never developed sustained combat abilities because they had never needed them. As Zipporah charged forward, Maya did something unexpected. Instead of dodging or counterattacking, she began to speak. "Your species evolved on a world with quantum instabilities," she said, stepping aside from their first energy blast. "Your ancestors learned to phase to avoid dimensional storms. That's why your combat instincts are based on hit-and-run tactics." Zipporah stumbled, confused by the casual conversation in the middle of combat. "What are you doing?" "Teaching," Maya replied, deflecting their second shot with a piece of debris. "Every species fights the way their evolution taught them to survive. But humans learn to fight by studying how others fight." She moved closer, her movements adapted from 17 different martial arts forms. Each technique had been modified to account for ethereal reflexes and energy weapon ranges. "Your people never learned sustained combat because you never needed it," Maya continued, striking at pressure points that corresponded to ethereal quantum organs. "But we needed to learn everything, because we started with nothing." Zipporah's energy weapons flickered and died as Maya's strikes disrupted the quantum fields that powered them. The ethereal staggered backward, their form beginning to phase involuntarily as their control slipped. "This is impossible," they gasped, their voice fading in and out with their physical form. Maya stopped her advance, standing just out of reach. "No, it's adaptation. Your species mastered quantum manipulation, but you stopped growing. We're still learning." The ethereal champion looked around the arena, seeing their situation clearly for the first time. Their abilities had been countered, their weapons neutralized, and their combat style predicted and overcome. They were facing an opponent who understood them better than they understood themselves. Slowly, Zipporah raised their hands in surrender. The arena erupted in chaos as the crowd processed what they had witnessed. 2 matches, 2 impossible victories. The human hadn't just won through strength or speed, but through knowledge and adaptation that seemed almost supernatural. As Maya walked off the arena floor, she could feel the weight of an entire galaxy's attention. In the diplomatic boxes, Representatives from dozens of worlds were frantically sending messages home, warning their governments that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. Maya Chen was no longer just a tournament competitor. She had become a symbol of human potential that terrified and amazed the galaxy in equal measure. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened while Maya slept between tournament rounds. Representatives from 37 worlds materialized in the council chamber, their holographic forms flickering with the urgency of faster-than-light communication delays. Chancellor Tuxara of the Altarian Republic called the session to order, her crystalline features betraying unusual anxiety. "We are here to discuss the human competitor in the combat championship." Initial reports suggested this was a minor diplomatic curiosity. Recent events indicate we may have gravely miscalculated. The Krillian representative, General Thokmar, stood with obvious difficulty. His exoskeleton showed stress fractures from his hurried journey to the council chambers. "The human didn't just defeat our champion. She demonstrated knowledge of our anatomy that exceeds our own medical understanding. This represents a potential security threat of the highest order." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Security threat. The words carried weight that went far beyond a simple tournament match. "How is this possible?" asked Coordinator Velthex of the Hivemind Collective. "Our intelligence services report that humans have had access to galactic databases for only 2 years. No single being could absorb that much cross-species biological data in such a short time." Ambassador Kellens, representing Earth remotely from Station Omega-7, cleared his throat. "Honorable delegates, I believe you're underestimating human learning capacity. Maya Chen has been studying alien biology since childhood. She represents our species' natural adaptability, not any kind of threat." Natural adaptability. General Thokmar's voice carried a harsh laugh. "She disabled our greatest warrior with techniques that shouldn't exist. That goes beyond adaptability into something approaching precognition." Dr. Zixana, the galaxy's leading xenobiologist, activated her data display. "I've analyzed the combat footage extensively. The human's knowledge appears to be based on pattern recognition, rather than supernatural ability. She identified biological weaknesses that exist across multiple species due to convergent evolution." The display showed anatomical diagrams of 17 different species, highlighting neural pathways and pressure points that followed similar patterns, despite vastly different evolutionary origins. "The disturbing implication," Dr. Zixana continued, "is that if one human can achieve this level of understanding in 20 years, what could their entire species accomplish given more time and resources?" Silence fell over the council chamber as the delegates processed this possibility. Humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community as a young, relatively weak species that posed no threat to the established order. But Maya's demonstration suggested they might have been catastrophically wrong about human potential. "There's another factor we must consider," said Prime Intelligence Officer Karseth of the Hegemony. "Our psychological profiles of humans indicate they share knowledge freely within their species. If this Maya Chen represents peak human capability, that knowledge won't remain unique to her." Chancellor Tuxara's crystalline form brightened with alarm. "Are you suggesting that humans could train entire armies with these abilities?" "I'm suggesting," Karseth replied carefully, "that we may be witnessing the emergence of a species that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in known space. Not through technology or military might, but through their ability to understand and counter every other species' natural advantages." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For 3,000 years, galactic civilization had been built on the principle that each species occupied its own evolutionary niche. The Krillians provided military strength, the Ethereals handled espionage, the Altarians managed commerce, and so on. But humans seemed capable of learning to excel in any niche they chose. "What do you recommend?" Chancellor Tuxara asked. "Immediate termination of the tournament," General Thokmar declared. "Remove the human from competition before she can demonstrate any further capabilities." "On what grounds?" Ambassador Kellens interjected. "Maya has violated no rules and done nothing except compete fairly. She's created a galactic security crisis simply by existing," Karseth replied. "That's grounds enough." But before anyone could respond, Dr. Zixana interrupted with new data streaming across her display. "Delegates, I'm receiving real-time updates from the tournament. The human's next opponent has just been announced." The display showed Maya's bracket position, now advanced to the semi-finals. Her next opponent made several delegates gasp in recognition. Shuthak, the Mindrender, champion of the Psychic Coalition, master of mental domination and thought manipulation. A being who had never lost because he could control his opponent's minds before they could even think to attack. "This changes everything," whispered Prime Phase Korani of the Ethereals. "If she can counter psychic abilities the way she countered physical ones." The sentence hung unfinished, but everyone understood its implications. Psychic abilities were considered the ultimate battlefield advantage, impossible to counter without similar mental powers. If a human could overcome even that, "We need to contact our champion immediately," declared Overmind Thalessa of the Psychic Coalition. Shuthak must be warned about what he's facing. But even as the emergency transmissions began, many delegates suspected it might already be too late. Maya Chen had spent 20 years preparing for this tournament, studying every species in the galaxy. If she had found ways to counter psychic manipulation along with every other advantage they possessed, the session devolved into urgent conferences between species representatives, alliance structures shifting in real time as governments tried to position themselves for a galaxy where human adaptability had changed every calculation. Meanwhile, on Station Omega-7, Maya woke from her rest period and began reviewing psychological profiles of psychic species. She had been looking forward to this match, the final test of whether human intelligence could overcome even supernatural advantages. In her quarters, she activated a meditation program she had developed, based on studies of 43 different mental disciplines from across the galaxy. If Shuthak the Mindrender wanted to invade her thoughts, he was going to find them very well defended indeed. The galaxy was about to discover that human adaptability extended far beyond the physical realm. The arena had been transformed once again, this time into a perfect sphere of polished metal that would amplify psychic resonance. Shuthak the Mindrender floated at the center, his crystalline skull pulsing with waves of mental energy that made the crowd's heads ache even through the protective barriers. Maya walked into the sphere, her steps echoing in the sudden silence that had fallen over the spectators. For the first time in tournament history, many viewers had chosen to watch through heavily filtered displays rather than risk direct exposure to the psychic energies about to be unleashed. Shuthak's mental voice resonated directly in every conscious mind within a kilometer radius. "Human child, your previous victories were against mere physical beings. I am thought made manifest, will give in form. Surrender now and I will make your defeat swift." Maya stopped 10 meters away and sat down cross-legged on the arena floor. The gesture confused everyone watching. This was the position for meditation, not combat. "I've read 47 papers on psychic manipulation," she said aloud, her voice calm and clear. "The interesting thing is that every psychic species believes their abilities are unique, but the underlying neural mechanics follow predictable patterns." Shuthak's crystalline form brightened with amusement. "You think you can understand the infinite depths of the mind through academic study? Observe as I demonstrate the futility of your primitive knowledge." The psychic assault began immediately. Shuthak reached into Maya's mind with the force of a mental hurricane, seeking to overwhelm her consciousness and replace her will with his own. It was a technique that had broken the strongest warriors from dozens of worlds. But instead of the expected collapse, Shuthak encountered something unprecedented. Maya's mind wasn't fighting his intrusion, it was redirecting it. "Fascinating," Maya said, apparently unaffected by the mental attack that should have left her catatonic. "Your psychic energy follows the same wave patterns as Altarian crystal resonance. I wondered if that connection was intentional." Shuthak's assault faltered in surprise. The human was not only resisting his mental domination, she was analyzing it in real time. "Impossible," he transmitted, increasing the intensity of his attack. "No non-psychic mind can withstand direct consciousness manipulation." Maya smiled, her expression serene despite the psychic storm raging around her. "You're right. A normal mind can't withstand it. But this isn't a normal mind anymore." She gestured to her temples where tiny devices were barely visible beneath her hair. "Neural feedback inhibitors based on Vexalan group consciousness research. Combined with meditation techniques from 17 different mental disciplines, I've essentially created a hybrid consciousness that processes psychic attacks as external data, rather than internal commands." The revelation sent shockwaves through the watching crowd. Maya hadn't just studied alien biology. She had modified her own human neurology to counter psychic manipulation. Shuthak's mental assault intensified to levels that would have shattered mountains, but Maya remained calm and centered. Her modified consciousness processed each wave of psychic energy, analyzed its structure, and redirected it harmlessly away from her core mental functions. "This is what humans do," she explained, standing slowly as Shuthak's attacks grew increasingly desperate. "We don't just adapt to challenges, we rebuild ourselves to overcome them. Every species in the galaxy perfected one way of thinking. We learned to think in every way necessary." The psychic champion began to show signs of strain. His crystalline form flickered as the massive energy expenditure started to overwhelm his natural reserves. He had never encountered resistance like this, had never needed to maintain such intense attacks for so long. "Your psychic abilities are impressive," Maya continued, walking slowly toward the floating figure. "But they're based on neural patterns that follow mathematical principles. And mathematics can be understood, predicted, and countered." Shuthak made one final desperate attempt to break through her defenses. He poured everything he had into a focused lance of pure mental domination, the kind of attack that could rewrite a planet's collective consciousness. Maya caught the psychic bolt in her modified mind and held it, studying its structure like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Then, impossibly, she began to redirect it back toward its source. "The beautiful thing about studying every species," she said, as Shuthak's own psychic energy turned against him, "is that you learn every species has the same fundamental weaknesses: over-specialization, predictability, the inability to adapt when their primary advantage is neutralized." Shuthak's scream was purely mental, echoing through every psychic-sensitive mind on the station, as his own reflected power overwhelmed his consciousness. He crashed to the arena floor, his crystalline form dim and flickering. The crowd sat in stunned silence. Maya had just defeated a being of pure mental energy, using modified human neurology and mathematical analysis. She had taken one of the galaxy's most feared psychic warriors and turned his own abilities against him. In the diplomatic boxes, representatives from psychic species began frantically sending emergency communications. If humans could counter mental domination as easily as they had overcome physical advantages, no species in the galaxy could consider themselves safe from human adaptability. Maya walked over to where Shuthak lay unconscious and knelt beside him, checking his vital signs with practiced efficiency. "He'll be fine," she announced to the medical drones. "Just psychic feedback overload. He should recover full function within a few hours." As she stood to leave the arena, the crowd remained silent. They were no longer watching a tournament. They were witnessing the emergence of a species that could overcome any advantage, counter any strength, and adapt to any challenge. Maya Chen had advanced to the championship final. Her opponent would be whoever emerged victorious from the last semi-final match. A battle between species that were quickly realizing they might all be facing the same existential question. What happened when an infinitely adaptable species decided it was time to stop being underestimated? The galaxy was about to find out. The championship final arena was the largest combat space in known galactic history, 3 kilometers in diameter. It had been constructed to accommodate the ultimate battle between species champions. Energy barriers separated the crowd from the combat zone, but even those seemed inadequate as Maya faced her final opponent. Korthak the Inevitable stood at the arena's center, his form a constantly shifting mass of adaptive matter. He was the champion of the evolutionary collective, a being that could reshape his body in real time to counter any threat. No attack could harm him, because he would simply evolve immunity to it. No strategy could defeat him because he would adapt his form to overcome it. He was considered the perfect warrior, the end point of biological evolution, undefeated in 300 years of combat. The crowd was no longer laughing at Maya. Representatives from 47 worlds had gathered to witness what many believed would be humanity's final lesson in the limitations of adaptability. Korthak could adapt faster than any study or preparation could counter. "Human," Korthak's voice resonated from his shifting form. "I have observed your previous victories, impressive displays of preparation and knowledge. But I am evolution itself, change incarnate. Your static understanding cannot overcome infinite adaptation." Maya stood in her starting position, looking smaller than ever against her massive, ever-changing opponent. But her expression remained calm, almost contemplative. "You're absolutely right," she said, surprising everyone, including Korthak himself. "Static understanding can't overcome infinite adaptation. That's why I didn't bring static understanding." The starting signal sounded, and Korthak immediately began his transformation. His body flowed like liquid metal, sprouting armor to deflect physical attacks, developing energy absorption membranes to counter weapons, and growing sensory organs to track any movement Maya might make. But Maya didn't attack. Instead, she began to speak. "Do you know what I realized while studying your species?" she said, walking casually around the arena's perimeter as Korthak tracked her movement. "You're not actually evolving. You're just accessing pre-existing genetic templates stored in your cellular matrix." Korthak's form rippled with confusion. "Your words are meaningless. I adapt to overcome any threat." "You adapt to known threats," Maya corrected, stopping her circuit of the arena. "Your species encountered thousands of different challenges over millions of years, and your ancestors encoded responses to all of them in your genetic memory. You're not creating new solutions, you're just accessing old ones." The crowd murmured as they began to understand what Maya was suggesting. If Korthak's adaptations were based on evolutionary memory rather than real-time innovation, then there might be limits to what he could counter. "Prove your theory, human," Korthak challenged, his form now bristling with defensive adaptations against every type of attack his species had ever encountered. Maya smiled and reached into her jumpsuit, pulling out what looked like a simple wooden stick. No technology, no energy signatures, nothing that should have been threatening to an evolved warrior. "This," she said, holding up the stick, "is a piece of bamboo from Earth. Your species has never encountered it because bamboo doesn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Your evolutionary memory has no template for dealing with it." Korthak's form shifted uncertainly. His adaptive systems couldn't identify the threat, couldn't classify the weapon, couldn't access appropriate countermeasures because none had ever been needed. "Impossible," he declared. "It's just organic matter." "I can adapt to any organic compound, can you?" Maya asked, and then did something that no one in the arena expected. She began to perform what looked like a dance. The movements were precise and flowing, incorporating elements from dozens of human martial arts forms. But more than that, they were completely alien to galactic combat styles. Every species in the galaxy had evolved their fighting techniques around their specific biology and the threats they faced on their homeworlds. Maya was using combat forms that had never existed anywhere, but Earth Korthak's adaptive systems went into overdrive, trying to analyze and counter movements that fit no pattern in his genetic memory. His form shifted frantically, cycling through defensive configurations that were useless against attacks that had never been seen before. "Your adaptations are perfect," Maya said as she moved, the bamboo stick flowing through forms that were simultaneously ancient and completely novel to the galactic community. "But they're perfect responses to known challenges. You can't adapt to what your species has never experienced." She struck with the bamboo stick, not at Korthak's current form, but at where his adaptive pattern suggested he would be 3 moves ahead. Her prediction was based not on his evolutionary memory, but on mathematical analysis of how his adaptation systems prioritized threats. The stick connected with a section of his shifting body that was temporarily vulnerable between defensive configurations. Korthak staggered, his form rippling with confusion as his systems tried to process a successful attack from an impossibly primitive weapon. "This is the difference between evolution and intelligence," Maya continued, her movements flowing into new forms that combined human martial arts with alien combat techniques she had studied and modified. "Evolution perfects responses to past challenges. Intelligence imagines new ones." Korthak tried to overwhelm her with sheer mass, expanding his form to fill a large portion of the arena. But Maya had studied this tactic too, and she responded with something his species had never seen: human parkour combined with alien movement techniques, allowing her to navigate 3-dimensional space in ways that defied his adaptive tracking systems. The crowd watched in amazement as Maya seemed to dance through the air around Korthak's massive form, striking with her simple bamboo stick at points his evolutionary memory couldn't predict or defend against. "Your species spent millions of years becoming perfect," Maya said as she landed from an impossible leap, her stick finding another gap in his defenses. "But perfection is static. Humans stayed imperfect, and that's what makes us dangerous." Korthak's form began to destabilize as his adaptive systems overloaded trying to counter threats that didn't exist in his genetic database. His perfect evolutionary responses were causing system conflicts as they tried to adapt to purely imaginary challenges. "I yield," he said finally, his voice carrying amazement rather than defeat. "You have shown me something I thought impossible, a challenge that evolution cannot meet." The arena fell silent as Maya helped the fallen champion stabilize his form. She had defeated the ultimate evolutionary warrior, not through superior strength or speed, but by being something entirely outside his experience. As the crowd processed what they had witnessed, Maya stood in the center of the arena and looked up at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "This is what humanity offers," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "Not superiority, but novelty. Not perfection, but endless adaptation. We're not here to replace anyone. We're here to help everyone grow beyond what they thought possible." Ambassador Kellens found his voice first, his transmission carrying to every world in the galaxy. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, I present Maya Chen, Galactic Combat Champion and representative of humanity's infinite potential." The cheers that erupted were different from the laughter that had greeted Maya's arrival. This was recognition, respect, and perhaps most importantly, welcome. Maya had done more than win a tournament. She had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to match other species, but to be something entirely new. The stars themselves seemed brighter as the galaxy began to imagine what they might accomplish together, with a species that specialized in not specializing, that excelled at endless growth rather than evolutionary perfection. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as warriors or diplomats or scientists, but as the species that could become whatever the universe needed them to be.